Good morning, everyone. This is our first episode of a little mini series that we're going to be starting called the Sin Bin, as we mentioned a couple days ago on the Pucking Around podcast. Check us out on YouTube and Spotify. My name is Alex. With me is my co host Cam. We're going to be doing something called the Sin Bin, as I just prior stated, where we're going to have little debates, which may escalate depending on what the debate is. I don't know if we're going to do this every week or not. That's still to be determined. But we're just going to pretty much have a little back and forth debate on something that we disagree about because me and Cam absolutely love each other, as you can clearly tell.
I hate
So,
you.
yeah, I hate you too. So this week's topic, we're going to get right into it. These episodes will only be about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the variety. But we're going to get right into it.
And the ferocity.
The Velociraptor. But this week's episode, we're going to be touching on the scheduling format of the NHL. Now, me and Cam have had pretty much a mutual disagreement of how we believe it is. I've been on the stance of I believe it needs to change, and Cam's always been on the stance of that he thinks it's good the way it is. I'm going to start with my reasoning. I think this schedule is very flawed. Reason behind this is because the way the format of the divisions are made, we have 4 divisions of 8. And when the NHL went to this 8-team division and wild card basis style back in 2014, they emphasized playing through your division. Where now with the way the scheduling format is, you have 4 games against 5 teams and then 3 games against 2 teams, which equal out to a grand total of, I believe, 26 games within your division. Where in the opposite conference alone, you have 32 games. Just based off of the way they worded that alone, I've always had a little bit of distaste for how the NHL has made the scheduling. My feeling is I think if you want to have a setup like that, the NHL needs to implement more division games and take out a little bit of the out of conference games. Cam's always been a major disagreeer on that. Cam, why don't you give me your reasoning?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I think the way the scheduling is right now is that it's perfect. I don't think it's perfect, but the one thing I will agree with you upon in this segment and disagree with you on upon everything else, that I do agree there should be more consistent division games and you should play through your division. I think the only thing I would change with respect to that is adding that additional division game per team or something along those lines and taking away from the other interconference games, not take away from the outer conference games. The reason being is because NHL fans are very well traveled, if we think about it. So if you look at how many fans are actually, especially the Bruins, are in Arizona and on the West Coast in general, a lot of those fans look forward to seeing the Bruins play in their barn once a year. And, I myself am also a secondary fan of the Colorado Avalanche. So having the possibility to go see them come play in Boston at least, once every year, which is what they currently do, is just kind of, I think it's great for the league. It's great for, other things. It means I don't have to spend an arm and a leg to go to Colorado to watch the Avalanche play. So I think that's the biggest reason why I don't think you need to really cut back as much on the outer conference games as more into the interconference games.
So here's my reasoning against this. I've always been consistent on having just a good, smooth format. My thought process has always been you run 6 games against each of your division opponents. 6 times your 7 opponents, that's 42 games. Then you're emphasizing what the NHL stated from the get-go in 2014, stating, we want you to play through your division. Right there is half of your games within the division. Then you keep the 3 games against the other team within the conference. There's 24. 42 plus 24 is 66. You have 16 games remaining. You have 16 games against the remaining division. The remaining conference. Those 16 games, the way I've always had it structured, 1 division all home, 1 division all away, and you alternate it every year. Not only, now I get your point that the fans want to have the opportunity to see each team play in their barn, especially if you are a fan of a team out of state. Like for me, example, I'm a Flyers fan in Boston. There, who knows? It could be like an Edmonton Oilers fan here in Boston that wants to see Connor McDavid play every year. I completely understand that. But at the same time, I've always been more on building animosity, building hatred, building rivalries. Best way to do that is to have the opponents in the division play. And it's not like you'll never see those out of conference teams again. You'll be able to see them next year or the year after, or so on and so forth, because they're alternating home games. It's just 1 year that you get all home, all away. And another good thing about this is the NHL would be able to save on travel funds too. And they get to put a little extra money in their pocket.
The NHL is already ranked number 1 among all 4 major sports in terms of traveling costs.
No, and by all means, that's good.
That's not going to save them anything.
But yes, you would, because you're not traveling. So I'll give an example. You're going to, say, you're an East Coast team playing the Western Canada road trip. You're going to Vancouver, you're going to Edmonton, you're going to Calgary. You want to throw Seattle in there? No, that's technically not Western Canada.
Do you know, in terms of division, do you know how far some of these teams play across from one another? So you still need to take a plane. So it's in terms of like maybe carbon footprint, but in terms of total cost, it's likely not going to change.
It would, but you're probably still saving thousands of miles regardless, because you're taking that West Coast trip out or East Coast trip out if you're the Western team. I understand that the Western Conference teams are going to be traveling a lot more regardless, because the trip from, for example, Los Angeles to Seattle is probably still like a 3-hour plane ride. I get that. But you're like the East Coast teams wouldn't have to worry about this. And the West going East in general, where you're saving.
But I don't want to play the argument that like, oh, just because it's not a problem with us doesn't mean it's not a problem elsewhere. So I think
that's more of a secondary reasoning, though. My main point and issue with the way the scheduling has always been based off of is just the sheer fact that there's no consistency with it, and the fact that the NHL is not going with what they stated from the beginning. That's saying, oh, we want you to play through your division, when you're playing more out of conference games in general than in conference. And I know you stated, yeah, we can do that by eliminating some of the out of conference games, but there's still a
interconference games.
Interconference games, I'm sorry. But there's still a lot of good rivalries between, hypothetically, the Atlantic and the Metro. Now, Boston and Pittsburgh, or Boston and Philly, or Boston and the Rangers only get to play each other a few times a year. Philly and Montreal, which me and Matt always have that little back and forth with. There's a lot of Metro Atlantic or even Pacific and Central Division rivalries that really aren't talked about enough that you would be taking away from too. But my main basis is make the scheduling based off of within the conference, within the division, build up the animosity. The early 2010s and 2000s, when I really loved hockey the most, I really experienced bad blood. That Penguins-Flyers rivalry in 2012 was one of the most awesome spectacles.
Yeah, but I think that's a result of the rosters. A lot of times the rosters determine the animosity.
No,
it's
and
not
that's
just
true.
the team. It's not just the team, like, rapport or anything like that. It has to do with a lot of the roster. Like, Matt Cook, there's a lot of being part of the Penguins. A lot of people didn't like Matt Cook, and that caused a lot of animosity between.
And that's true. I'm not arguing
that had nothing to do with the scheduling.
But they played 6 games back in that time. And you see your opponents more.
We also had 2 less teams. We also had 2 less.
Yeah,
teams.
no, and that's true. But that's why I improvised this way to adjust the schedule. And back in before 2014 too, you weren't playing each team in your barn every year either. The way the schedule was, there was real no consistency with it, but at least you had those interdivision games.
Yeah. But now I think it's better for the league to have the teams go through that cycling. Would you agree that road trips are important to building team camaraderie?
Well, I agree with that. And it's not like you wouldn't get those road trips, though.
No, but the extent and distance in those road trips is also, if you actually ask some of the players, they'll say like, yeah, a road trip to Buffalo for like one night is not the same as a road trip to Los Angeles or doing the West Coast road trip.
I get that. And that is a team bonding thing. I understand that. But again, that wouldn't be something that would be taken away forever. That's why I suggest the alternate every other year thing. And I think the pros of building the interdivision rivalries continuously outweigh the
What about the
pros of
cons?
that team bonding.
Look at the cons, though. So if you're going to alter the schedule, right? So you can artificially change the strength of a single team schedule. Let's look at the NFL as an example. There are so many teams in the NFL that have easy strengths of schedules, end up getting into the playoffs and get ass beat by other
I
teams.
think
And
that's more
it's
because
like
of them adding the 7 seed more than anything.
but still, you're artificially changing a team's strength of schedule in that way. Would you not agree? By
No,
rotating
I
teams in
can't
and out,
agree
would
with
you?
that because
You don't think so?
The way the NFL schedule is structured is completely different than the NHL's. The NFL has their schedule set at pretty much by this way they make the schedule out based off. You get your 6 division teams. You have 1 division all home that alternates. I mean,
That's division.
1
I'm
full
talking
division, not
about
all
everything
home.
else.
1 division that you alternate within the conference every year. 1 division out
So
of conference you alternate every year.
so let's bring it back into the NHL then. So
But
let's just say we use the Pacific as the one because the Pacific is arguably one of the weakest divisions. So you're telling me that they should have an easy schedule?
It's not really, but that's the team's fault. That's for building the teams pretty much. You're still
Yeah, I don't like that. I like a competitive league.
If that's the case, then you may want to consider changing the 1 to 8 playoff format at that point. That's what it comes down to, because you're still getting a competitive league, but this falls onto a secondary thing where we have the playoff structure completely different, where it should be maybe top 2 teams in each division make the playoffs, and then next 6 are free for all.
Okay, so before we talk about that, then why don't I just mention what my proposal would be if you were going to change the league instead of doing the 3 interconference games? For example, every team plays each other a minimum of twice. That would leave room for the division to be in your own division. You play each team a minimum of 4 times, and then there is a 7th team, or I'm sorry, your 7th team that needs to rotate on a 5th. That would make much more sense to me because now you're guaranteed 4 games, for each of those.
So you've added only a total of 3 division games, though, because the way it is right now, you have 5 teams 4 times and then 2 teams 3 times.
Yes, but now it's more structured.
So where do those last 3 games get taken from?
The games for example, let's use the Atlantic and Metro. We'll take them away from the Metro.
So how would you determine which 3 teams you only played twice in that division instead of 3 times? Is it just going to?
What do you mean? Every team plays each other twice. 1 home, 1 away at minimum. That is the rest of the games.
I understand what you're saying from there.
If you do the math, it ends up being 7 times 4 or something like that.
That's 28. And then you said you play 1 team in the division 5 times instead of 4, right?
Yeah, so it might need to be a little bit more than that.
28 plus 1, you have 29 games now within the division. That leaves you with 53 games remaining.
Sorry, so you could probably still add. I'm sorry, it would be 5 games. I think 1 is a 6th. I can't remember the exact math that I did. I can't remember the exact number that I had come up with, but yeah.
So you have 36 games then in the division. So how do you structure the rest of the schedule
then? What do you mean?
So there's 46 games left. You have 36 now within the division, which helps my point, which is good. But how do you structure the rest of the schedule?
I just said every team. So if you take,
you're taking 1 game out from each.
So there's 31 teams outside of your own team, correct?
Yes.
Multiply that by 2. So that is now 62 games. So now you have 20 games that need to be allocated elsewhere, correct?
And that would be within your division?
That would be within the division.
I mean, I like it better than the current process. I'll say that. But I don't feel crazy about playing a team in your conference twice, the same amount of times as a team out of your conference.
But then you're actually playing through your division.
No, and that's fair. But and that's a good thing. But then that's where I say you need to kind of adjust the way the playoff structure is then. That's the only issue I have.
So then
At
So
that
then,
point,
if we did it that way, how would you organize the playoff structure? Yeah,
if we're
structure.
going to do it
Structure.
based off the way you did it, I have one of two proposals. Number one, you go back to the way you used to, except the top 2 seeds are the 2 division winners, and then the top 6 in the standings after that within the conference. Or number 2, you just have 4 teams from each division automatically make it, and then you
Oh, I don't like
reshuffle
that
based
one.
off the standings.
I don't like the latter.
I don't like the
Yeah,
last. I would prefer the former too. That's why.
yeah.
But I
I would like
would
the
have to
one
kind of
2
adjust it.
seeds. Yeah, I like the 1 to 8 seeding.
I
That was
would.
something I liked.
I wish they'd go back to that so bad. But I think that's our points based off of this is just where the division is. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I'm right. You're wrong.
I'm right. You're wrong.
No.
All right,
You.
folks.
No, you. You. 5 minutes for fighting.
5 minutes for fighting.
It's in the name. It's in the name. No, Alex, that was very spirited. Fans, actually, why don't you guys let us know down in the comments section what you guys think? Should the league change the scheduling? How would you guys change the scheduling? Do you guys like the playoff format? Do you guys not like the playoff format? We don't know how to do polls on YouTube. We're new to this shit. Can I
Throw
swear?
it a
I'm
comment.
swearing.
Give us
So
a
yeah, throw
suggestion
us a
even for a
comment.
future episode.
Email us. Yeah,
We've
email us. We'd
already
like to hear
got-
from you.
Yeah, we've already got 2 or 3 future episode ideas coming up. So yeah, with all that being said, thank you for tuning in for this little mini episode today. We appreciate you guys showing up. Have a great weekend, everyone. And thank you all for following around the Pucking Around podcast.
And don't forget to email us at puckingaroundpodcast@gmail.com. That is puckingaroundpodcast@gmail.com. I'm going to do that after every freaking show. I think I just have the automated voice for it.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at PAP Media 24 and follow us on Spotify at The Pucking Around Podcast. Again, at The Pucking Around Podcast. With all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to today's little mini episodes of the Sin Bin. We will see you again. I'm not sure if we're going to do this every week yet, but we will update you at the next episode of the Pucking Around Podcast. Tune in to our next episode release on Tuesday. Have a great day, everyone.
I'm going to disagree with Alex every Saturday.